let's talk about the Chicago Fed. It has a new leader, Austan Goolsbee, but it turns out that the executive search firm that helped pick him as the Chicago Fed's new president includes, among its executives, his wife, Robin Goolsbee. Joining us now is Bloomberg reporter Steve Matthews. Steve, the Chicago Fed announced Goolsbee's selection in December. He took over as president of the Chicago Fed on January 9th, and we're learning about this now. What happened?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this sort of illustrates the problem with the process. There really isn't any transparency. In this case, we at Bloomberg got a tip that this, relationship was there. There was no disclosure by the Chicago Fed. There was no disclosure by the Fed overall. And this kind of just raises the question of, how do these processes really work? The Chicago Fed and the Fed say that Austan Goolsbee's wife had no impact on the selection. To our knowledge, that's probably true, but it certainly doesn't look good. And the way this came out, without there being any disclosure at all, kind of raises the question, why don't they, disclose these kind of things?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like how many times when we talk about issues like this, it's not really the crime. It's always the cover-up, if you will, even if it wasn't intentional. I am curious, Steve. I mean, Goolsbee was already, for better or worse, was already sort of had been politicized to a certain extent. A lot of people thought that his affiliation with the Obama administration should have that in and of itself should have disqualified him for this role. You had two Fed members that actually abstained for voting for him, and now Powell has to go to the Hill next week. And I'm almost certain he's going to be asked about this. I mean, how does the Fed save face in this?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's not really just the relationship with the Obama administration, because you had, for example, Ben Bernanke worked in the Bush administration in the Council of Economic Advisors before becoming Fed chair. And, Janet Yellen was at the Fed, now at the Treasury. There is some interplay, but Austan Goolsbee, unlike, say, Bernanke, was on TV regularly on Fox, kind of laying out the Democratic case, and often in very partisan manner, and is kind of seen as a partisan. And unusually, you had two of the Fed governors who voted to abstain and said that they didn't see it as an appropriate pick. And you also had there are 6 board members of the Chicago Fed. 4 of the board members gave to Democrats. I mean, so it just the appearances don't look good.
No.
There's no transparency, and I'm sure you're right that Powell is going to get asked about this.
Yeah, and you wonder if they're going to eventually change the way that the regional Fed presidents get picked and maybe require some kind of confirmation process there, too.